Good morning, Mickey. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of our Heritage Month celebration. And I wanted to use this opportunity to not only thank you as a faculty member, but also a person who leads inclusive initiatives on campus and a leader and longtime community member of Suffolk University. So this month we're celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we would like to ask you some questions. So let's get started.
Mhm.
So, could you please tell me about yourself and how you identify?
Sure. So my name is Mickey Lee. As you mentioned, I'm a faculty at Communication Journalism and Media. In this academic year, I'm also the interim chair of the department. In terms of race and ethnicity, I identify myself as a Hong Kong Chinese. I was born in Hong Kong, educated there. I left the city for the US when I was 25 years old to get my PhD, and I went to University of Oregon.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that one of the conversations that we've had when it comes to identity and labors, we've talked about what it means to be Asian or
Mhm.
Asian American. Could you shed more light on that and how that has impacted you?
Sure. So if we trace back the racist history in this country, we could easily tell that, Chinese laborers, they were the first group to arrive in this country. They built the railroad to connect the West Coast to other parts of the country. And then during the turn of the century, you do have, a small number of, mainly scholars coming here, attended elite universities, including Yale, Harvard, Wellesley College. But then if we are thinking about the mass migration, Japanese, they came here because of better opportunities. And then, people from nowadays, what we call Thailand, the Philippines, South Asia, etc. So I think what is interesting to know is if we look back at, U.S. census, in different senses, there were different racial categories. There used to be a time that you could check whether you are a Chinese or Japanese or CMEs, which is, nowadays what we call Thai. They even have the term Asian Indians. So the term Asian really came to the picture during the civil rights movement. Seeing the rise of Black power and also women's power. The Asians at that time, they wanted to band together and have a label as well. So I would say the term Asian in this country, definitely has never been neutral. Also, if you ask what we call Asians in this country, depends on which generation they belong to, depends on how many years, they have been in this country, the purpose of them being in this country. Um, Not everyone has the same story. One thing we also cannot ignore is, the racism exists even between different ethnic groups.
Mm.
So, for instance, during the anti Asian hate violence last year, a lot of people actually blame Chinese, because there was a believe that the COVID pandemic, was because of the force of Chinese. So when the, murders happened in the spa in Atlanta, Georgia, and the victims were mainly Korean women, there was actually a lot of kind of blame from Koreans in this country on Chinese, because to a lot of white Americans, Asians are Asians, they don't differentiate your ethnicity.
Mhm.
So I think the term Asian definitely does not address racism between different ethnicities in this country.
Thank you so much for that
Mhm.
insight. Another thing that I wanted to also talk about is how does your heritage or your ascribed um, Asian status, how does that impact your work? Or not only as a person, but as a faculty member and as a leader on campus?
Well, I think in the classroom, students of Asian heritage, either as Asian Americans or international students from Asian countries, they are usually surprised but glad that there is an Asian face in the classroom. And also, the subject is not what people usually identify as, like something that Asians are good at. Because, when we think about what Asians are good at, we
Mm,
immediately think about all those quantitative fields.
right,
um,
technology.
yeah, math, computer science, economics, or finance, etc. So the field of communication, because it involves creative art, and Asians are not stereotyped to be particularly creative. So I think students are actually pretty pleased to know, that there is an Asian face in the front of the classroom, and I think it helps to validate, their identity and also their career choice a lot. In terms of being on campus, I think we are doing a better job now, because we did have a dean in CAS who identified herself as Japanese American, and now the SBS dean comes from China. So I think there is much more visible leadership. But even that, when I look at all the department chairs, in CAS, I think I am the only one who identify as not white. I'm not the only international scholar, but for the two other department chairs who were not born in this country, like to other people, they are white. So I think, having representation is very important, because, there is a term called bamboo ceiling, that, at the starting point, a lot of, Asians and their white counterparts, they start off in the pretty much same level, but then when it comes to management, a white person has a much better chance to be promoted than an Asian person, because Asian are seen as not outgoing enough, or not knowing how to resolve conflicts, a lot of stereotypes, ideas.
Mhm.
So I think even seeing an Asian leader on campus, once again it validates people identities.
Thank you. So, knowing how representation is important and knowing how you don't fit that
Mhm.
stereotype, what would you say is something that you've accomplished in your career that you're very proud of?
Mhm. I don't think there was really a moment in which that, like I woke up and feel, oh, you're so great that I have accomplished that. I think especially in academia, kind of failure is part of success. Like you would
Mm,
never succeed if you don't fail.
right.
I remember reading something, I have forgotten where or who said that, but the idea is you always apply for jobs, better jobs. You submit your work to publisher, journal articles. The more you do that, the more rejections you get.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
getting rejection are actually like central to success because it means that you are out there trying. If you are afraid of being rejected, afraid of being a failure, what you do is you don't submit anything. You don't
Right.
submit anything to a journal, to a publisher. Once you get a job, you never apply for the next one. So yes, you don't get any rejection, you don't face failure, but the question is, is that an accomplishment if you kind of stay in the same place? So I don't think that, I had the moments in which that I thought I have accomplished something, but definitely now when I get rejection, still from a number of places, it just gets easier and easier because it is not about you. So I think if there is an accomplishment, it is just like, for me, how much easier it is to accept failure and rejection and move on very quickly.
Oh, that's really wonderful. I think sometimes we don't think of, that failure or rejections are a necessary ingredients for success.
Mhm.
So knowing that, what would you say to um, an incoming student, a new staff, a new faculty at Suffolk University? How would you describe this place for them, being that you've spent a number of years here and you are a respected leader on campus, especially with your work on inclusion? What would you say to them? What kind of advice would you give them?
I always say, the first place is, find a place that you belong to. Sometimes it doesn't even need to be kind of a big place. If there is a corner in the library where you feel the most comfortable to be in, that is your corner. Secondly, establish a relationship with someone. It doesn't need to be a faculty, it can be a staff member. Because I feel, especially for first generation students, um, there is a feeling that grades are all that matter. But, as we all know, grades are part of the deal in college. You can have a perfect grade, but if no one ever knows you, no one will champion
Mhm.
for you. So,
Yes.
find a mentor or find a champion. So, if that person knows of an opportunity, you'll be the first person that person have in mind. So, find a space that people feel belong to and also, find a champion.
When it comes to mentoring and sponsorship, I think that's something that in the Career Center
Mm-hmm.
we will try to promote. We're very proud of our RAMP program. How do you feel when we bring up the issue of heritage and identity in mentorship and sponsorship?
Um, well, I think the first thing is actually to acknowledge that they matter because I feel even nowadays, there is this ideology that, races do not matter anymore. But once again, if we think about, why Asian Americans, employees, they tend not to get promoted, it shows that, it really matters. Um, I would also say, like sometimes a label is beneficial, sometimes a label can be harmful. So do not reject the label because you dislike the label. For instance, Asians are stereotyped to be quiet. So it's not like, exactly a terrible label. You can claim it if you identify with it. But if you feel this is actually harmful, tell people that it is harmful. So I do not feel rejecting every single aspect of a stereotype is a good way to go. But at the same time, if a stereotype is harmful to yourself, to your career, you definitely need to let people know.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being a part of our celebration and using your voice to amplify what this Heritage Month means to our campus community. So I want to thank you very much. And is there any lasting words that you would like to impart?
No, no, I think, I think it's wonderful that the Career Center is doing that. I, also feel in my past 17 years, actually a lot of Asian students kind of branch out to other fields that usually we don't associate Asian with, like theater, art, media. So I actually kind of, want to congratulate our Asian students there to defer stereotype every single day, and also
Yes.
to thank their parents to accept the choices made by their own children.
Mm, thank you.